Well, good evening. I am going to continue with Revelations chapter 12. And before I do, I want to say that for those that might not be aware of this, there's a lot of talk about among various Christian teachers or bloggers, YouTubers, that September 21st, I believe, or 23rd, which is Rosh Hashanah, is the rapture of the church. And and that there's another individual on YouTube that is showing how a comet that was recently discovered has this very broad elliptical orbit, and that to play the orbit out, it's the first time in the history of the civilization where this comet has come into this near-Earth environment, and that it's coming at the same time as Jupiter is moving into the constellation, or out of the constellation Virgo, and it's coming into the constellation Virgo, and it's actually going to go right between the legs of the Virgo star configuration. So, and the way this comet looks, it looks like a sperm, and so it looks like it's impregnating the womb of the Virgin, which would be the Virgin would be the depiction of the bride of Jesus. So that would be the church, the true believers, in the real Jesus. Nothing to do with the organizations called Christianity, unless each individual is doing their best to have a relationship with the Father, then because that's who Jesus said to actually talk to and pray to and give our will to in his absence. But when he's physically present, then for those that have a personal relationship with him, a real personal relationship, not like the Christians talk about a personal relationship, because they don't have a personal relationship with him because his vehicle isn't here. So you can't have a personal relationship with somebody that's not here. It's that plain and simple, and Do taught that, I believe, if I remember correctly, although I can't quote them on exactly what they said about that. But so then after it moves into Virgo, this comet, it moves into Pisces, constellation Pisces, and then finally, well, I don't know if finally is the right word for it, but it moves into Orion. And Orion happens to be the location that Do said when they looked up into the heavens, they felt the closest connection and familiarity, or not familiarity, they felt closest to Orion. They related most to the area of the constellation Orion. So when this person was actually showing in Stellarium, which is a software that allows you to look at all the bodies in the heavens, where he had to input the coordinates for this comet because they weren't up there yet. And also another software that's called, I think, Sky Live, that he uses. I believe I posted a link on my Facebook page to this individual, and also on Yeah, my Facebook page, so that anybody that wants to see what he's saying can see what he's saying, and the fact that Jupiter is right there with him at the same time, where Jupiter is was named after the I forgot the name now of the Roman or Greek Greek god, but was the god of the sky, so that would be the god of the heavens. So that would be like T, the older member, and the comet would be like Jesus, I believe, coming in his glory. I might have that a little wrong, because Saturn, well, I'm not real clear on some of those Greek and Roman mythologies that that the planets were named after. I don't think the planets were named after those names by accident. I think the Next Level may have had a hand in that, but I don't know that for sure. But considering that T was an amateur astrologer, I'm saying amateur because I don't believe she was necessarily part of the professional astronomers, astrologers, the Astrological Association. I don't know if she was or not, but she never said that she was, and Doe never said that she was, and it doesn't really matter. But I know she was doing some natal charts for people when they would ask 3 times, and she wouldn't tell them that she needed to hear that asking 3 times. They would just remind her, and by the third time she knew they were serious about wanting it, so she would spend the time doing it. I don't know if she charged money or not. So I can't say that she was professional, but that's really neither here nor there, but at least it lets you know what D&O did not talk about that I was aware of to the overall group. What they said to individuals before I joined with them, and at times when I wasn't around, that they didn't necessarily feel like needed to be said to the whole group, is not something I have any record of, obviously. So they may have talked about it to somebody. So anyway, but considering that Revelation chapter 12 starts with that first verse, which actually I wasn't going to start right here. I was going to go to 12:1 to show that for a second, because that's the verse that I'm starting with, and it starts with, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Well, they're saying that Leo, the constellation Leo, is made up of 12 stars, but they're counting Venus, Mercury, and Mars in those stars, because I guess there's some kind of alignment that puts them in the, maybe they're in the same constellation. I hadn't looked that up. I should look that up, because maybe they are in the same constellation right now. And Leo, of course, means the lion, and it has to do with is the king and the crown, the Stephanopus, or however you say that, means king and crown. So, but see, what the Christians are doing that are saying this is they're showing more symbolism to the existing symbolism of Revelation 12:1. And nothing wrong with that. I don't fault them for that, but it's not the most accurate way of looking at everything. If you're just, including more, seeing more and more of the symbolism that's involved, because then you never get to the meat, the greater meat, it's all meat, but you don't get to the bottom line that's going to actually bring you closer to the next level that these signs are intended to show. And that is when you get the interpretation that you can only get when you were with T and Do, so that you know that T was an astrologer before she awakened, and that she actually brought astrology into the classroom in San Antonio, or near San Antonio, maybe it was Kerrville, in 1980 maybe, approximately, or 81 maybe. And she said it was a game that she was giving us to play, and the instructions, what the game was, they brought in a bunch of books, Alan Leo books, and horary books on a horary astrology, which is hourly astrology, where you actually ask a question, and then based on the minute that you ask that question to the universe, to the heavens, whatever, they didn't specify that you had to ask the question to the next level, although that's the implication, that you're asking the next level for the answer to the question. I'm sorry I said to the universe, because that's a bastardization of the whole idea of the next level, even though they are the leaders, the designers of the universe. So it's got its accuracy, but again, in more symbolism, instead of having the details of knowing that it's a crew of living individuals with physical bodies and physical souls and assignments and a structure of an organization that has many members, and has older members and younger members, and it has infant members as well that haven't graduated yet, but are given tasks like the Watchers had, like the Luciferian space aliens had that they fell away from. So anyway, so that first verse, of course, shows that, and actually Revelation 12 then goes on to talk about there appeared a wonder in heaven also, behold a great red dragon. Well, that's Draco. And the dragon is Lucifer, okay? And then it goes on to say that Lucifer is going to rule all nations. Well, before I say any of this, for people that are coming into this for the first time, Do, in one of the only scriptures that he talked about officially, when T was still incarnate, came to us by himself, which was very, very rare, and held a meeting and went over Revelation 12:1 and said that this woman was talking about T, his older member. So Do was witness to T being the father, and T was the witness of Do being Adam, Enoch, Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and now the one that was going to finish the task that he started when he was with Jesus, when he was with the vehicle, when he took over the vehicle named Jesus, and he overcame that vehicle, overcoming the human kingdom through that vehicle, and because of that, his whole body was filled with light, which was seen on Transfiguration Mountain, where he glowed like a light. I forgot what the description was exactly, but that 3 members of his crew, of his students, witnessed it. And there were also 2 individuals that showed up there who they said were Moses and Elijah. So they might have been the actual physical vehicles that were those human vehicles that were taken by the next level when they finished their tasks, as is recorded in the verses in Kings. 2 Kings, I believe, is where Elijah is recorded as being taken, and he had a witness of Elisha to that, and they had students also that were witnessing a degree of this. They didn't actually see him leave, but they knew he was going to leave, and that was his student body. that returned again to be with him when he came back to do the task of Jesus. Now, so, and he's the one that told us that Lucifer was Do's adversary, and that the students in the classroom were also assigned adversaries, which were the fallen angels. An adversary and Satan is the same word. So, what I want to get to, though, is that I'm combining the things that Do said, and now I'm going to show how they apply to this Revelation chapter 12, besides the point that, so the woman's crown in 12:1 is of 12 stars. So does that mean the woman's crown is Leo? Well, it's possible that the souls that overcame the world enough to be crowned after they fulfilled the Jesus mission by giving their lives, standing up for Jesus, were given crowns. And a crown in that context would be more accurately spoken of as the physical bodies, that they were grown by the next level, made by the next level, as opposed to propagated through human mammalian fornication or reproduction, sexual intercourse. So they were rewarded with those new vehicles, but that they hadn't overcome the world yet, so they weren't next level adult vehicles. They were infant vehicles, and they still had the capacity to fall away from the next level before they had overcome completely, when they would be awarded a vehicle that was an adult vehicle that did not have the capacity to return to the human kingdom. But in theory, they could, because in the next level, even when you're an adult member of the next level, you still have your free will. So in theory, you could abandon the next level and go try to start your own planet somewhere, if you knew how to do that. But I think you would be cut off pretty quickly, and it wouldn't last, because the next level doesn't want you to fool with their experiments, because their experiments have lives on the line, souls on the line that are planted in these experiments. Anyway, that's beside the point. But I mean, there were things that Do talked about as possible, but unlikely. Like they said, it was possible that a student now could outgrow their older member in the next level. They said it was possible because the next level doesn't limit your growth, and by performing tasks for the next level is how you gain lessons and you gain growth, and you get assigned more and more tasks and more responsibility in those tasks. So that's where you theoretically, but then they also said that, but that's not really going to be likely, because the older members are growing as fast as they can grow already. And so for you to actually pass them up would mean you'd have to grow at their pace, and then even more than that. And that might be unlikely that it's possible, but theoretically it's possible. But, just get to the next level. That's the main thing. Don't forget about who you're trying to outgrow, because there's no competition in the next level. Everybody loves their ability to work for the next level, and they don't have any interest in trying to show somebody up, or try to gain what somebody else has. If they want what somebody else has, they can work for it, and that's and the next level will give them opportunities to do any tasks that they want to do. I believe Do said they would start them off as apprentices, observers, actually, is the first test that we were taught needed to happen for any lab that we were entering. A lab being what T&O used as an example, like the kitchen, the Nutri-Lab, and the fiber lab for the laundry, so forth. I'm not going to go through all that before, because I have many times in these videos. And I don't want to bore people that are watching this for the umpteenth time, these videos. So, So I say the 12 stars in this case are the 12 disciples of Jesus that Jesus said he kept from the prince of perdition, of waste, of destruction, which is Lucifer and his fallen angels. But Lucifer was the head of the fallen angels, I believe. He was probably the oldest among them. So the stars, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later than this, when I get into Daniel chapter 12. Must be talking too fast and getting indigestion. I can say it, but so I guess I should be reading on my screen, looking at the camera instead of at the screen that I'm looking at the software for the driving the camera, because I got two different screens here. Anyway, but let me gather my thoughts here. So I talked about previously why I'm saying that a crown is a physical vehicle, because it shows in Revelations how they throw down, the 24 elders throw down their crowns. And also the 4 living beings do the same thing. And why 24? Well, it appears that actually the 12 stars may not actually be the disciples of Jesus. They may be the ones that were in female vehicles. Maybe there were 12 female vehicle that were stars, that were the stars in these 12 stars that were with Jesus. But they didn't need to go through that lesson, because I'm saying that the disciples needed to go through because they had done it before. How? Well, I'm guessing right now, but the thought occurred to me just now that they might have been the ones that did the task of the Old Testament prophets, each of which I think was bumped off. Like Jesus said, that they kept on, the Next Level kept on sending prophets to Jerusalem, to the children of Israel, wherever they were, whether it was actually Jerusalem or some area in the vicinity of Jerusalem, and they were banished from Jerusalem, and he said, you stoned the prophets, and because of that, Jerusalem wasn't going to see the Son of Man's return, unless they saw the Son of Man talked about by somebody else, which the Son of Man did go to Israel, though, and helpers went to Israel to see if there was any next level mind left there, and they felt like there was no next level mind left there. So he actually proved to himself that what Jesus said was going to happen. Jesus said that you will be left desolate. That means left to be waste, to be made waste of, and that means to be discarded and recycled. And that's why that's why everybody migrated away from there. And the Next Level saw to it that happened. Even before Jesus, of course. But then even after Jesus, he saw to it that the migration continued, to where they could make way to where the next location would start the new experiment to the United States, which became like a little Israel in a sense, because it's actually got as much population in the United States of people from a Jewish heritage as are in Israel right now. Although maybe that's changing to some degree. Anyway, so there's a lot of interesting correlations there, and some of them are in my book about that trend, that scattering that took place. Because there's been a number of scatterings. The Next Level keeps on doing that. They scattered the Tower of Babel was designed. The Next Level decided that didn't want them to have that much facility for technology or whatever, and being able to communicate that well. To design the city the way they did, I guess. And so they scattered them. I don't know how far they went, but and they confounded their languages. And now what do we see? We see a total confounding of the language now. But the Next Level's not doing it. The Luciferians are doing the confounding of the language now. But even the Luciferians might have done it then too, because the Next Level could have put them up to it, or might have been automatically put them up to it. I doubt it. I think that's not right. I'm getting that impression right now. I don't know if that's coming from Do's mind, but usually when I get a stop like that, it's pretty clear I'm going too far in saying that the Tower of Babel was confounded those people then by the Luciferians. I don't think so. I think the Lord did that to spread them out, even though the Luciferians and the humans and the leaders of the humans are used often to do that scattering. Like, for instance, army went into Jerusalem area, into Judea, when the tribe of Judah and Benjamin were located there, when they split off from the other 10 tribes. And then the kingdom of Israel remained in what's now called Israel, and the others left the area, and I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm not clear about where the extent of the kingdom of Israel as opposed to the 2 tribes that broke off, because the kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes, had gone far astray already by eating things that were sacrificed to idols, which was against the Moses rules, and other things that they were doing. So they were breaking the laws of Moses, so 2 of the tribes broke off, and one of them was Judah. And that's the tribe that Jesus' vehicle came from. And that's actually, I think, represented. The Lion of Judah is then therefore talking about the Leo constellation. Although Do was actually, his vehicle was born when the sun was in the constellation Taurus. But you know what? I should do his chart, because perhaps his moon was in the constellation Leo, and that would go along with what I said earlier about Revelation 12:1, that the moon was a footstool for the woman, for the father. In other words, a worker, to step up. A footstool means that the Next Level gave the human kingdom, Do, to be their footstool, to step up onto, to get into the next level through. That's how that footstool is actually meant. But it also means that he was underfoot, and he had feet. In other words, he had a human vehicle. I don't know if the next level vehicles that are adult vehicles have feet, because I believe they glide around wherever they're going. Sort of like that movie Cocoon, I think, Do indicated. Well, I'm not sure that they said that. So I feel like they indicated it, but I can't remember exactly why, so I might be wrong about that. So please don't repeat that without indicating that Sawyer doesn't remember it precisely. But see, this is how things get distorted too. I understand that. And but I mean, I do have impressions of things that I received, but I can't just pinpoint where I got the impression. And I know I don't want to make things up. I don't need to make up things to feel good about myself or anything. Because there's tons of things that if I want to feel good about myself, I can easily feel good about myself for having the opportunity to be with Do and T. But then again, if I'm feeling that good about myself because of that, and I failed, I flunked the lessons, then how can I really feel good about myself? So it's not an ego trip anymore for that. Even though there's a degree of ego with me that I have to fight against, but it doesn't surface. I haven't seen it surface during these broadcasts or other times where I'm writing. I don't know. I take that back. I have seen it when I'm feeling a little too pleased with myself. And what I feel has been coming through with me. So that means that I'm taking credit for it. And if I'm taking credit for it, that's my ego speaking. That's my humanness speaking. Because the next level does not want to. Next level members do not take credit for anything. They give the credit to the next level, to their older members. And what I'm talking about is not taking credit for it. I'm talking about having the feeling of being pleased with myself. And that's the form of taking credit that I'm talking about. Gosh, my eye is having a hard time focusing. Anyway, so I'm not getting to what I wanted to talk about in this broadcast yet. So I'm not going to move down to the next verses. Because I've done it before several times, actually. But I want to get to the next verse in this. But T fled into the wilderness. That was when T and Do both took us to, because they're both at this point the generators of life. Because if Do was born to the throne in the previous verse, the male child born to the throne, then they're both operating on the throne at the same time. And they did operate as a partnership. So when they took us to the wilderness, that was in Wyoming, when we were living outdoors in the literal wilderness. There were no homes for many miles around. Many miles around. And there were no facilities, no water, no restrooms, no porta potties, no outhouses, no facilities at all. It was just like a dirt road that kind of looped around the whole Medicine Bow National Forest area where the Veedavou campground was. And Veedavou actually means earthborn. And that's where we started the overcoming process that would birth us into membership in the next level by completing, which I did not complete. But a number of the members of the 38 did. I believe probably at least 28. Maybe not. Maybe not exactly 28, or maybe more. Maybe some of those that joined later had already overcome. But Do said some needed to come back and overcome more. So, before they were awarded with an adult vehicle. So anyway, I'm not going to go through that. I've talked about that before. So then we get up to Revelation 12:7. That's where I wanted to start off here now. And it's interesting that that's verse 7. I don't know, maybe it's not interesting, but in my study of the book of Revelation, it does look like, even though there was like some kind of priest, a Catholic priest, who actually was put all these verses into chapter and verse, I have no doubt that the Next Level could have helped him figure out where the divisions were, because of sentences, of verses, and of chapters. Because the way it's organized is very interesting. But I'm not going to spend much time on any more time on that organization. I think I did touch on it in my book, if I remember correctly. So Revelations 12:7, and there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon, Lucifer, fought and his angels. So you have the fallen angels against Michael and his angels, his graduate angels, or angels that were infant members of the Next Level, that or were those 12 that were crowned by T in a previous civilization. Whatever combination could exist, and maybe combinations that I'm not aware of. But anyway, the angels really means messengers, and that's what we have here. So let me actually go to that verse here. Angels, see, from angelos, especially an angel, by implication a pastor. By implication a pastor, okay? But a pastor is not an angel. See, this is where Strong's Concordance was the person that put this together, is putting in his own mind to call an angel a pastor here, when it's an angel is a messenger, is the clearest definition. And that's somebody that actually delivers information to bring tidings. Well, that means bringing information. It's definitely a task that's above a watcher that just observes and reports their observations. Now they actually have the responsibility of delivering accurate information from their older members. So they need to, and T and Do taught us how to try to be good messengers, which I'm not going to talk about now. I've talked about it before. By repeating back instructions to them, and then things like that. And that was one of the 17 steps. Can you follow instructions? Which was the basis of a lot of the instructions in the Moses camp. You know, like I was talking to somebody today about how they were told that not to change the shape of their beard or whatever. They needed to have straight corners on their beards, and that it was wrong if they didn't. It was something they were doing something wrong. I don't know if there was any penalty to it, but in Leviticus talks about this, and I said, well, I think that's equivalent to the way in the classroom we had barbers that Do taught how to cut hair, and they were taught to cut hair the way Do taught. And if Do saw a haircut that wasn't the way Do taught. Then he came and gave another lesson to that hairdresser on how to do that haircut. And part of it had to do with the back. And I think he didn't want it coming to a point in the back. I think that was, some people had hair growth that made it look like it came to a point. That's what I remember from that. I hope I remember that correctly. And he also wanted it to be a little bit full around the ears, so it was a little bit coming over the ears, just barely. And I don't know that there was any practical reason for this. But if we were following the instructions that Do was giving us, then we were learning to follow instructions, and we could be trusted to follow instructions in the next level when the instructions were very important to follow. Because if you say something wrong to somebody when you're a messenger on a task, there can be a lot of ramifications of that. That can become misinformation. And so the next level tries very hard to make sure that no misinformation is given by their messengers, even though they can still make mistakes and do a better job. But there's probably also degrees of how well they deliver their messages. Because everything is not necessarily cut and dry. Like the next level doesn't tell you, well, they might say these words exactly, but they might not say that exactly, because that's not the evidence that I have in the classroom, where T and Do did want us to repeat back what they gave us, but if we didn't say it exactly, but we got the intention, that's what was most important, that we got their intention for the instruction. And as many keywords as we could remember was part of that intention, okay? But I know this is a fact because I was somebody that was not able or didn't have the capacity or just didn't put up enough effort. I don't know what the reasons were to actually repeat back everything Do said verbatim. Sometimes I was able to, but sometimes I was not able to. And so I might try again, and Do would say, okay, even though I know I didn't get it exactly. I don't know if he was frustrated with me or what, but he allowed me, he didn't feel like he needed to press it any more than that to make it into a big deal that I didn't get every word correct. And there were others that I'm sure that he had to do that with too. I know he did. So I wasn't alone in that. Otherwise we wouldn't have had the 17 steps. I talked about changing instructions also according to our own interpretation. That was the second step, I think, in the 17 steps. So, now war and battle is the same thing, but the war in the heavens, the way that the next level wars against the Luciferian misinformation is with their mouth. In other words, with their words, with their announcements, with their disclosures of the truth, with their roars, their thunders. Roar and thunder are the same word in the Greek. And that also, the roar is what comes out of the lion, which is the lion's voice. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit here, pertaining to Michael. I'm not going to go into Michael yet, but I'm going to say that Michael's fighting against the dragon. Now, so that's like saying that Michael and the dragon are adversaries, right? Remember I said before that T said that, notice how T was witnessing to Do about the things about Do, and Do was witnessing to T that she was his older member, his heavenly father, and this woman, and and the chief of chiefs, not the chief of chiefs, but the chief administrator of this garden, and I believe even perhaps the designer of this garden. I don't know to what degree, but I believe Do indicated that. I can't remember the exact words on that. Actually, I think he might have said that at a time when I was not there, so I read it somewhere, but I can't remember exactly where now. Anybody sees it, let me know the exact place. But he did call her a chief, and he only started using that term long after they talked about how there was a chief of chiefs. And Do never indicated that I heard that T was a chief when they were talking about the chief of chiefs as being the oldest member of the next level, most experienced member of the next level, the greatest member of the next level. However that exactly came about, I don't know. But Do said when we got to the next level, we would understand more where the chief came from. But we're not capable in human vehicles to understand that. So that war is a war of words, ideas, thoughts, frequencies. Okay, so then who is Michael? Well, Michael says here is an archangel, okay? Well, we know that. But what does Michael actually mean? It means, oh, how come this isn't showing up? Got the wrong one? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh boy. I did it again. I did this last time. Oh, I didn't switch to the right screen. Yeah, I'm confused. Sorry. I was in the right page before, but I was just confused. There I am. Okay, so, oh gosh, so I went through all, I'm going to go through all of them right now quickly just so it's on the screen, so that if you want to refer to it and see what I was talking about, you can see what all these words meant. Angels as messengers, not a pastor as an angel, fought as in warfare to battle, to fight, which it is a battle. Nobody gets into the next level without a battle. Overcoming process is a battle against the lower forces of the planet, against our adversaries, against the discarnates that want to keep us human because that's all they know. And they've been the product of, many of them, most of them, the product of the Luciferian space alien programming and misinformation. So even though they may have good intentions, once you go towards the next level, they no longer can be helpers to you. So even if you had spirit helpers that helped you with a lot of things in life, which is possible, that T&O could have even sent some of them to you to help you with things that were of the human kingdom that they don't need to try to help you with directly because they can send you discarnates that can do it. T&O did indicate that. Anyway, so dragon, a fabulous kind of serpent, goes back to the Adam and Eve start of the experiment. And the dragon fought. So Michael is from Michael, the Hebrew, and it says the name of an archangel and of the 9 Israelites, Michael. But anyway, notice that it's talking about El at the end here. which is actually in the Hebrew is a name for God. See, El means God. So they were named God, and then it's interesting that the students of Do that were adopted in 1978 or 9 or 78, I think, maybe 77, maybe it was early 77, and 1994, 95, 96, and 97, around those times, were all given Odie names. And it's interesting that they said originally that the Y would be dropped when we became an adult in the next level. So I would have been Soyod, S-W-Y-O-D. But Do changed that actually, and he made us into Soy, so I was Soy Doti, S-W-Y-D-O-T-E. But then when a bunch of returnee Odies came back into the class in 1993, he said we weren't going to use those Doty names, D-O-T-E names. Because T at that time was also spelled T-E. And Do at one point said it didn't matter how he spelled it, could be T-E or T-I. And then he agreed finally at the end, before I left, he had agreed that we were going to just spell it T-I. So that's a little bit of history of that. So best I recall it. And so, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to go back to Michael. And now to do that, I need to go to the Old Testament, where it says here that, where is my Old Testament? I think it's right here. There it is. I move this, then it doesn't move. Yes, it does. Okay, good. So I can look at this screen. I'm going to read this. It's a long verse, but it's verse 1, chapter 12. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered. Interesting that time was used 3 times there. Or no, 4 times actually. People shall be delivered. At that time people shall be delivered. Every one that shall be found written in the book. Now, right from the beginning, you want to know, people think about what time frame is this? Because Daniel was before Jesus. But I think he was after Elijah. But I'm really not clear on that right this minute. So I'll have to research that. But time comes from the word 6256, Eth, this is Hebrew, and Ad, 57 of time, especially now. And now, Michael, stand up. But also when, so when Michael stand up, okay? Now, when does Michael stand up? Well, we know that Jude referred to Michael. You know why I didn't cue that up? But actually in that verse, he wasn't talking about the time with Jesus. He was saying that Michael battled with Lucifer over Moses' body. Over Moses' body, yeah, I guess that's what the way it was said. And let me see if I have that actually here. I don't know where I have that. But I could go quickly to the book of Jude with one of these screens. Well, I wanted to go there later. All right, let's go to the book of Jude at this point and just search for Michael. In the New Testament. And it comes up with Jude, and I want to go over there. And Jude 1:9, yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst, Old English, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. Well, T&O said that the next level took the body of Moses. But there's the evidence in Scripture indicates that Moses walked off into the desert and was never seen again. And that certain documentation, I think in the Talmud, said that they never found any bones or a grave or anything. And so they couldn't prove that he was eaten by animals or whatever happened to him. But you can be guaranteed that if Michael the archangel was contending with Lucifer over Moses' vehicle, over his body, that we know who won. So, but this is another reference to Michael the archangel. And another reference to Michael the archangel is in Isaiah 9:6. Oh no, that's not true. But this is talking about, Isaiah 9:6 talks about the Prince of Peace will be born, a child will be born, and be called a Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So that's all terminology that in Isaiah 9:6 that is indicating Jesus, I believe, because Isaiah came after Moses, and I think maybe though before Elijah. But anyway, the word Michael also means who like God? Who is like God? I'm going to show that in back into my Old Testament. Who is like God? Okay, so like God would be like saying who is like the Father, because God in the Old Testament in Genesis was from the word Elohim, which was a plural actually, and it meant judges and magistrates, the rulers of the planet. But in God in the New Testament, from the Greek, is theos, which Well, no, God, after the Moses experience in the desert, used the name Jehovah, which means the existing one, or I am. And and that was used also, then Jehovah was used by Elijah when he was referring to God. And Daniel, I'd have to go to where, if they ever mention the word God, to see what word was used. But in any case, where this says that Michael shall stand up and that he's the great prince, Jesus was the Prince of Peace. But Lucifer was also considered to be a prince. But he was a prince of You know what? I didn't cue that one up either. I mean, there's so many connections here. To cue everything up, I'd be a crazy person. But I can't remember where I saw that. Where I remember from what scriptures I got that from. But Lucifer was considered to be a prince of darkness, or the prince of destruction, or like that. So they were both considered to be princes. In other words, like the sons of kings. Because Lucifer and the fallen angels were sons of God, which meant they were infants to T. And Do was also an infant to T at one time, before he became an adult in under T's chief administration. So it's hard to imagine, isn't it, that the chief administrator of the planet was incarnate. No wonder why so few humans want to even pay attention to that. When I say that, they just like, I think their eyes roll up in their heads when I say it in person. I've seen that happen many times. I mean, even saying Do was the return of Jesus makes that happen. Which I've seen that happen a number of times. And just talking about unusual things like UFOs being spacecrafts and space aliens. Anyway, you know, I don't have to get into all that, but you can see why, because the Luciferians have worked so hard to make the kingdom of God look like a spiritual realm. You know, that's why it's the universe that's doing things for us now, for many people, you know. Somebody I know was talking about a female that was hitchhiking for the first time in their 20s, and they were scared to do it at first, and everything went really well, and they said they were thanking the universe. And it's like, okay, you know, thank the universe, but who you really should be thanking, in my opinion, if you want to thank somebody big, is the creators of the universe. Because thanking the universe is like thanking the earth for something. It's like thanking your tomato for giving you food. The tomato doesn't have consciousness. Well, of course, some people may think it does. And, you know, it depends on how you define consciousness, of course. You know, if it's got electrical charge, then, which every cell does, then I guess you could say it has consciousness to that degree. But this is just an example of what we all know, that anybody that's watching this know that the language has been confounded so that these terms are meaningless anymore. Because because the Luciferians have worked so hard to make them meaningless, so that which serves the next level, because then when they come and tell the truth, then only those that they actually prepare to hear those words are going to respond. So in this way, they can separate the grades in school better, so that they can have the students that they are ready to graduate going to the next level first. And since I'm bringing that up, I should actually go to this verse in the few things that Paul said that seemed to have some accuracy, that though didn't. He might have talked a little bit about these verses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where he was talking about those that sleep. And let me go to that chapter for a second here. And I'll go to it with my screen as well. Do a search on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And zip down. Where it says, okay, but I would not have you to be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep. This is 4:13. Which are asleep, that ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. And asleep meant those who had died, but I guess maybe he was saying it in a way that they weren't dead forever. It says here as one of the definitions to die, to be dead. But sleep, as asleep, be asleep, fall on sleep, we're all used the same way by this Greek word. The next verse in 4:14. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them which also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. Okay. Next verse, 4:15. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. So what he was saying was that those that were asleep were still going to get a chance. Okay? That's true. Well, if they were souls. If they were spirits, they get a chance, but perhaps in another way. Which I don't want to try to describe now because it's not that clear in my head, and I can't pull in exactly what Tiendo and crew said about it. So I'm not going to go any further with that. But certainly any of that were souls that were planted at that time, if there were souls planted at that time, which I think there were. Otherwise they wouldn't have believed in Jesus at all. They weren't lost by losing their vehicle. But it appears that Paul thought that he would be alive in the vehicle that he's in when Jesus came back and descended from the heavens with a shout. Now I want to move over to make sure I got the right page here first. Okay. Okay. And I want to move over to, I want to go to Thessalonians here, because I want to actually look at all these words. And it blocked little old me out. Whoops. Not that you really need to see me, of course, but if somebody just comes into this right this moment for the first time, they'll know who's talking. Anyway, just to stay with my format, I guess. Let's see, go down to, what was it, verse... Okay. I don't need to go to that. Well, he's using the basis of, this is what the basis of rapture comes from, the term rapture. It means caught away. Now, where that comes from is down here. Where it says, caught up. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up. Or, the word up comes from to seize. In various applications, catch away, pluck, pull, take by force. Now, how did Do think about that term? Well, he said that there were two raptures, and the first one was when Do went public, and a bunch of students left their world behind. The next level was actually giving them smelling salts, was the terminology Do used, to wake them up in those vehicles, so that the souls that were outside those vehicles would come into those vehicles to the degree that they could, and take those vehicles over, even though that wasn't. That was like what Jesus called fishing for men, and the bait was the truth, and what was prepared. Those vehicles were prepared for that, to hear that truth, so that when they heard it, they knew they had the opportunity to respond to it. Everybody that heard it didn't respond to it. So the next level prepared probably more than would respond, because they wanted to be sure that they had enough souls to accomplish the task, and the others could then respond to the next time the call went out in 1994, and or now, I suppose, any of the times after 1994. 1994 was the second rapture, and it started with the 1994 crew leaving their world behind. And but as I've seen before and showed before and wrote about in the book, that started the second wave, and that wave appears to have more than one phase. I'm going to call it a phase because that's what Do called, or Do called, even the seventh thunder. They didn't call it thunder or roar. They said that the book was the first phase, and or the website was the first phase. The website and the book were one and the same, and they didn't know how many more phases there would be before they exited. They said that in 1996. And then, of course, the second and final stage was phase to that wave was their exit, which was actually the graduation for both waves, but the second wave continues, which Do indicated by saying that that the door wasn't closed. That it would be open for a short time, and a short time by whatever the next level determines the short time is, which in the human kingdom could be 20 years, could be 40 years. I suspect it's 40 years because of the use of the term hour, judgment hour. Because the time of judgment only starts now, according to Revelation chapter 11. That I went through my Revelation 11 series. So that started the second 40-year period, I think, because it talks about in Revelation 14 how it's the hour of judgment. H-O-W-R. No, H-O-U-R. So that's what catch away is. But he's saying, then we which are alive and remain, okay, alive mean those who have are quickened, which is the case for those that were in Do's crew, that they were alive, right? They were in physical. They were quickened. In other words, they were quickening vehicles. That's what that meant. Quickening meant that their vehicle was alive. They were talking about the vehicle when they're talking about the quickening of the spirit in the vehicle. I guess the quickening has to do with the energy or the like the the frequency-based generation of energy, or the free will, the will of that soul, or spirit. Anyway, I don't want to try to get into that more because I'm ad-libbing, of course, by it. But based on what I read about it, I can't seem to put it into words very well right now. But then we which are alive and remain, and it talks about how remain is the same word as those who survive, those who are left to leave all around. So you're talking about two different people here. It's almost as if he knew that he was going to meet them in the clouds, meaning the ones that descend from heaven with a shout, a voice, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Now the dead in Christ are the ones that died, gave their vehicles in service to Jesus, who was the Christ. He was the only Christ at that point. Christ being an anointed one, somebody that was given the task of Christing and teaching the task of christening to the student body, which was overcoming the world. That's what the Christing task is. And it just so happens to actually be the same kind of word as chrysalis. So it's actually taking that human, described as like a caterpillar, and taking them away from their world so that they're in their cocoon, and they're like, in their convent or their monastery, is the way term Do used, for the classroom. And you're in the monastery in a very isolated, accelerated growth opportunity from the world where you can focus 100% of your energy on graduating and learning your lessons and graduating, overcoming your human vehicle and all its likes and dislikes and the human kingdom and the root system of that human kingdom being the vehicle's family and stuff. So they're going to rise first. Okay, so that's what happened in 1997. They rose first. And then those who remained, which are the remainder, Jesus also talks about them as the elect, that the elect, if they can be, will be deceived by the Luciferians. Deceiving by being told that somebody is coming in the name of Jesus, coming as a Christ, which happened many times. There's been many look-alike Jesus or whatever, Jesus, and there still are. People that say they're Jesus and they wear robes and they have long hair and beards and they're white, the ones I've seen. Although maybe there's one that I know about from Brazil. So I imagine he's not, well, he could be a white Brazilian, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I mean, what color they are or what nationality they are, they can still think that they're Jesus. If the Luciferians, see that there's a right prospect for making that kind of declaration. Because by doing that, then they're basically discrediting the whole Christian idea and the whole Jesus belief by making them into liars. Not liars, because they're not necessarily knowing that they're not telling the truth, but making them into false Christs, false Jesuses, false Christians, false overcomers. That's what an Israelite is an overcomer. Because one of the things they're saying here is that well, I'm not there now, but maybe I went enough. Well, no. The only thing I want to focus before I go to that, maybe I'll even forget about that, is that the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, which is very interesting because Lord here can actually be plural. Because it's a title. It's saying the supreme in authority. In other words, the supreme in authority and himself can be themselves. See, themselves. So this could actually be saying the Lords themselves shall, which is talking about the future tense and descend, shall come down, shall come. And this is after Jesus left that this is being talked about. So Paul would have gotten this from one of the disciples, maybe Peter, because he had the biggest relationship with Peter according to the documentation. So figuratively, to descend, which was a descent from the next level to the human kingdom, is a descent. They're falling down a step. They're going down. They're going to a lesser condition, a lesser evolutionary level, in order to bring some out of that evolutionary level. So, with the voice of the disclosure of a tone, so the tone, interesting that's a tone, with the Tien Do, or with the Do archangel. How's that? With the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La archangel, with the sounding archangel. And archangel is a chief angel, chief of the angels. Okay, so Not the same thing as an older member, a heavenly father, a deity. Or they would have said God here. They would have said voice of God. But they're saying archangel. Or they would have said the Lord, the voice of the Lamb, or the voice of, they might have repeated Lord, if they meant, but they meant archangel. So all the indications are, through a number of different scriptures, that Jesus was the chief archangel. So there's every reason to believe, and that Michael was the chief archangel. And it even says here in chapter 10, I think it is, I'm just going to read it. Daniel chapter 10, verse 13. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. Now, there's interesting. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. And Michael in that context means who is like God in the Hebrew. So, so there are a number of connections with Michael being the return of Jesus, but it was the name that he used, however he got that name, when he was not incarnate. That's the bottom line, because in this verse in Daniel, which I'm not going to skip away from this Thessalonians, I think I've said enough about that, even though I could talk about how the trump would sound, how the voice of an archangel, and with the trump of God. The trump of God is one of the 7 trumpets. It happens to be the 6th trumpet, is when it appears that, well, it actually says in Revelation 10 that a great angel comes at that time, and great can be considered to be a chief angel. So that's another connection to that. And Daniel was also told to not talk about some of the things that he was receiving, not to write it down, just like John was told that. Anyway, so back to Michael in Daniel. Well, they're calling him a great prince. He standeth for the children of thy people. Now, standeth means to stand in various relations. Arise, appoint, cease, confirm, dwell, very important. Be employed, endure, establish, leave, make, ordain, be placed. Now, this is all referring to situations of a physical vehicle on the earth, because this is the way the next level works with people on the earth. They don't work from a spiritual perspective. Whenever they had a messenger to send, they sent them with physical bodies like to Lot, and to wrestle with Jacob, and there was a physical wrestling that was taking place, I guess, in that depiction, or to be at the tomb, or be at the Transfiguration Mount, or to Trudeau and crew in Tucson, or was it Yuma? I think it was Tucson, where there had 2 individuals seen in the craft by 3 students who got up in the night to use the restroom, and saw them in 2 different situations. One was walking across the hallway in the big house that they lived in Tucson, And the other one was standing over a student in a bunk. Both of those beings that were described by Rio as, which he experienced, he didn't see them, but he dreamed about them. And he said that the same night. And he wrote about it as, phosphorus white, or like 4 foot tall. They looked like boys, in their size and their. He said they looked like they were wearing a one-piece suit and a phosphorescent whiteness to them. And they were like looking over somebody that was in a bunk that was having problems actually relating to Do, and actually left the group soon after that. Trying to remember the name of that person in the group and whether I met them or not. I think I did. Because I met everybody except for Devotee, David, woman in the only black female vehicle. There was only one other black vehicle with Destody and black male vehicle. Anyway, so but about this time, how do I know we're talking about the end time? Well, there's a number of clues, but in chapter 11 of Daniel, it's talking about the end time over and over again. And here it's talking about how those that are going to be found written in the book, they are going to be delivered. And that's the same word as saved, I believe. See, saved and delivered. So none of that happens. Well, I guess there are some saved. Well, saved really has to do with being saved from the recycling. And nobody is judged until the end time. So I think it's safe to say that if they're saying that these people at this time will be delivered, that they're talking about the end time, which is now. And also saying that it's a time of trouble, and that's the tribulation. You can actually look at that here, and it actually says time of trouble, tribulation. That's where the Christians get it from. Time of adversity. And Old Testament prophets also are talking about it as during the end time, or the last day, or the time of great trouble since the beginning of the world. That's how it's talked about by Isaiah and Jeremiah, I think, and Malachi, and I might got some of that mixed up with some of the other Old Testament prophets. But so I just basically wanted to I'm going to go back to see if there's anything else I want to say about that before I close this broadcast. For the Lord himself shall descend. Oh, no, that's not where I was on that. Oh, boy. All right, let me go back to Revelation 12:1. Or 12:7. Anyway, so the dragon didn't prevail fighting against Michael. So neither was there a place found anymore in heaven. So it appears that Lucifer at this point and his angels, or at least just Lucifer, basically sealed his fate as being recycled. And he's recycled, as is talked about later in the book of Revelation, I believe in chapter 20, where he actually is sent into the lake of fire. And that's after the false prophet and the beast are in the lake of fire. And if the beast is in the lake of fire, that means a large portion of the United States is probably either burned up or under lava. Or made into a desert. But since it's lake of fire, I think lava is probably the biggest indication. I don't know, because I don't know if there's any mountains. Well, you never can tell. I mean, the next level can, have a few earthquakes and have a little mountain stick up from it and fill up the area with lava. I mean, there was recently just such a thing found, an island just. Islands have been forming from volcanoes from under the water. And so they're becoming lava islands. I think I've done enough. And here's where it says the dragon is the same as the old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and the angels were cast out with him. And then it talks about that's when salvation comes, after they go through that battle. And so the students that graduated went through that battle with the adversaries for all those years. So, good night.